The former English Defence League leader Tommy Robinson has been appointed as an advisor to the UKIP leader Gerard Batten. The party said Mr Robinson, whose real name is Stephen Yaxley Lennon, will advise on rape gangs and on prison reform. Mr Robinson is banned from joining UKIP under rules which bar former English Defence League and British National Party members. Well, UKIP's former leader, Nigel Farage, is calling for a vote of no confidence in Mr Batten after the appointment of Mr Robinson. He's been outlining his objections to Justin Webb on BBC Radio 4's Today programme.
No, I wanted to talk about real issues, issues that politicians are afraid of, issues about uncontrolled mass immigration, illegal immigration, the growth of terrorism across Europe, the huge mistakes that the EU made with people coming across the Mediterranean.
But you had posters with Syrian refugees who were never really
How do you know they were Syrian refugees, and why were they refugees when almost every single one of them was a young male between 18 and 30 years old? Hardly any of them would ever have qualified as refugees, and I wanted to have these conversations, but to do so from a political party that did it.
But that's the point, isn't it? It's the conversation. It's the conversation that leads to this and leads to the appointment of Tommy Robinson.
If you don't have this conversation, you don't get parties like UKIP doing well, you don't get referendums happening in the country, and then the far right does exist. If I've got one real achievement in British politics, is that I did pretty much single-handedly kill off the BNP.
Nigel Farage. Well, let's go over now to our correspondent Jonathan Blake, who's with Gerard Batten in Westminster. Jonathan.
Yes, thank you, Anita. I'm pleased to say Gerard Batten joins us here in Westminster. And let me ask you then to respond to what Nigel Farage has said, and that is that you're taking the party in what he calls a shameful direction and that they should get rid of you.
Well, I'm surprised that Nigel's got such an interest in what UKIP's doing, seeing as he walked away 2 years ago and hasn't displayed any interest in it whatsoever since. And he recently said that he was going to give 100% of his effort to Leave Means Leave, which means 0% to UKIP. So I've had the job of saving the party from disappearing into oblivion, which I've done. I've done a good job of that. We've now got membership rising, we've got money rising, we're comfortably in the black, we've got donors giving us money, and we're up in the polls, we're up to 8%. So I actually think I'm making the right decisions in what I'm doing.
He says you should be focusing on the broad issue of immigration.
I've been focusing on Brexit, which is why we're going to organise this great big Brexit betrayal, Brexit means exit march on the 9th of May. We are going to try and get tens and tens of thousands of people out to that. And my objective there is to encourage those people to come and join UKIP, because the only thing that makes any difference in this whole debate is how many votes can you take away from the Tories and Labour at the next general election. That's the only thing they care about. And that's my goal, that's what I'm doing, and I'm not doing bad at the moment.
Why then, in the meantime, are you appointing Tommy Robinson as an unpaid advisor?
Well, he's merely a personal advisor on two particular issues. I want him to advise me on the rape gang phenomena, which he knows a great deal about, and conditions in prisons and prison reform, which he also unfortunately has first-hand knowledge of. So I have two important areas. I have advisors on all kinds of subjects and policy spokesmen. He doesn't need to be a member of the party to do that, but he's going to help me in that so that we can develop policy going forward.
People would say that he's Islamophobic. He's blamed the religion of Islam and the Muslim community as a whole and held them accountable for terrorist attacks in the UK. Do you agree with him on that? And by associating with him and calling on his advice, are you not Islamophobic in the same way?
Islamophobic is a made-up word that doesn't mean anything. It's an irrational fear. I don't have an irrational fear of Islam, neither does Tommy Robinson.
It's a prejudice against a religion.
Not a prejudice. We have never said anything about Muslims. We do not talk about Muslims. Tommy Robinson doesn't. We talk about Islamic ideology and critique that ideology, because everybody out there who's watching this show who wants to know knows that the reasons we have these terrorist attacks all around the world is because they derive those ideas from Islamic ideology, and we need to understand that and confront that.
There are plenty of other people you could ask for advice on the phenomenon of child sexual abuse in the UK and rape gangs and life in prison. Why are you asking Tommy Robinson about that?
He put his life on the line and done this. He's high profile. He can bring a lot of people to that march on the 9th, which he's going to do. He's going to assist us in that. So everybody knows what he stands for on that. He's actually somebody who's been persecuted by the state because of his views. I was in court when that case was referred up to the Attorney General because the judge knew there was no case whatsoever, and Tommy Robinson was kept in prison in solitary confinement for 4 months because of that. So I think he's a good person to have on side. A lot of people respect his stand on things and his courage. It isn't about him, and it isn't about Nigel Farage.
Well, you're appointing him as an advisor and you're responding to the criticism of that. So it is about him today in part. He is a convicted criminal. On the first count of contempt of court, he was convicted and serve that sentence.
Convicted criminals sitting in the House of Lords making laws over us. Nobody seems very bothered about that. He's got a few minor convictions, so I think that I'm not going to take, lots of people have had criminal convictions in their past. That doesn't mean to say they can't do something good in the present and the future. And
by bringing him into the fold of the party, albeit as an unpaid advisor, you're flying in the face of your own rules which ban former members of the EDL and the BNP.
Party. He isn't in the party. We have and by the way, we have a prescribed list. There are ex-members of the BNP sitting as Labour and Conservative councillors. We don't do that. We have a prescribed list, and what I've asked the party to do is to consider waiving that list, which we can do under our constitution, in one particular case, his. And I, in a spirit of democracy, said that should be put to the members, and the members should be allowed to vote on that. So I'm proceeding in this in a very democratic way, and it will be the members that decide that, not me.
Should the focus now not be on Brexit, though, as the NEC of your party seem to maintain? And just finally, can I put it to you, if there was a vote of no confidence in you, and Nigel Farage has suggested there would be, do you think you'd win it?
Round the table at the NEC meeting last Sunday, every one of those NEC members acknowledged that I had saved the party and put it back on the strong footing that it is now. Some of them may disagree with me on this particular issue, but they know that it's down to me that this party has survived, not Nigel Farage or anybody else, and they will want me to continue. I'm absolutely certain of that.
Gerard Batten, thank you very much for joining us on BBC News. Back to you.
Jonathan, thank you very much. Jonathan Blake there.